All right, so good evening and welcome back to a Watchdog News special report. This is Jared Campbell. So on the brink, global tensions and the case for World War III. So good evening and welcome back to Watchdog News, in association with Watchdog Ministries. Tonight we'll delve into the escalating global tensions that many fear could be the harbinger of World War III. From Macron's dire warnings about Putin's expansionist ambitions to the bitter dispute between Trump and Zelensky, the fractures in the geopolitical order are growing deeper. With European leaders scrambling to shore up their defenses and U.S. foreign policy standing at the crossroads, we ask, is the world sleepwalking into a major conflict? Let's talk about Macron's warning, the next front. So French President Emmanuel Macron has issued a stark warning if Russia is not stopped in Ukraine. Russian President Putin will turn his sights on Moldova and possibly Romania. In the series of interviews, Macron urged European nations to bolster their defense capabilities, fearing a decline in U.S. engagement under President Trump's administration. Macron is reviving discussions on a European nuclear umbrella, asserting that Europe must prepare for the possibility of fending off Russian aggression without complete reliance on the U.S. NATO security framework. With the Brussels summit approaching, the European Union faces internal discord over defense funding and strategic autonomy. Macron has contacted multiple world leaders, including President Trump and President Zelensky, to manage escalating tensions following the White House dispute. Let's talk about Trump versus Zelensky. Here is a diplomatic breakdown. Tensions explode in the White House with Ukrainian President Zelensky clash with U.S. President Donald Trump over military aid and security guarantees. Their on-the-camera fallout underscores a more profound mistrust between Washington and Kiev. Trump's repeated insistence that Ukraine should show more gratitude for past U.S. military assistance and the emerging skepticism from his administration, led by Vice President J.D. Vance, signal potential shifts in American foreign policy. Additionally, Trump accused Zelensky of interfering in U.S. elections by favoring Democrats, further straining the relations. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is calling on Zelensky to mend ties with Trump, highlighting the alliance's fragile outcome at a critical moment. If Ukraine loses U.S. backing, European security could be fundamentally weakened, leaving NATO vulnerable to a direct Russian confrontation. Talk about European fractures. So Orban and Fico challenge unity as Macron and Schreiber rally European leaders for a unified stance on Ukraine. Nationalist leaders such as Viktor Orban from Hungary and Robert Fico from Slovakia push back. Their stance aligns with Russian narratives, advocating for an immediate ceasefire, which many fear could lead to the de facto Russian territorial expansion. Slovakia also demands that Ukraine restore Russian gas transit, which could once again deepen Europe's dependence on Moscow's energy. At the same time, Russia has called Zelensky's visit to the U.S. a complete diplomatic failure, accusing him of being an irresponsible warmonger. Kremlin spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stated that Zelensky's obsession with continuing the war poses the greatest threat to global stability and reaffirmed Russia's goals of demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Wow. Adding to the European divide, Marine Le Pen, leader of France's far-right National Rally Party, took a neutral stance on the Trump-Zelensky dispute, arguing that both leaders acted in their national interests. She criticized the European Union for lacking a unified identity, stating, "I do not know what Europeans are." There are countries and nations, and the nations of Europe are clearly divided. Le Pen's position highlights the growing nationalist pushback against deeper European integration and foreign entanglements. From the Rand Report analysis, right, strategic overreach and the U.S. position, drawing on Rand Corporation reports and research, the U.S. has long employed strategies to overextend and unbalance Russia. by imposing economic, geopolitical, and military costs, according to the RAND study and Counterinsurgency and Stability Operations report. Successful military interventions often require extensive and sustained commitments, something Western nations appear hesitant to undertake fully. Another RAND brief outlines how economic warfare, such as energy and sanctions and military pressures through NATO, can erode Russian capabilities and risk triggering retaliatory escalations. The U.S. is also aware that Russia's vulnerabilities, such as economic instability, declining population, and a fear of Western encirclement, could lead to a desperate military action. If Russia perceives a threat, it could preemptively strike NATO assets, accelerating the road to World War III. Furthermore, the RAND report findings suggest that small-scale interventions often fail to deter tyrannical regimes, making a full-scale conflict more likely if Russia senses weakness among Western allies. The miscalculation of deterrence, whether led by US, NATO, or Russia, could be the tipping point for World War III, Middle East, and beyond, a multi-front conflict. While the focus remains on Eastern Europe, the ongoing instability in the Middle East could further accelerate global conflict. The collapse of Israel-Hamas ceasefire negotiations raises concerns about regional escalations, drawing in the U.S., Iran, and other actors. Meanwhile, China continues its military buildup in the South China Sea, testing U.S. and allied naval presence. If multiple conflicts unite simultaneously, the ability of Western powers to contain them diminishes, making global war a plausible scenario. Signs we are approaching the brink. Number one, fractured alliances. The U.S.-Europe divide over Ukraine strategy and Orban and Fico's resistance weaken NATO's unified stance. Number two, strategic miscalculation. Russia perceives NATO expansion as a direct threat, right? Increasing the risk of first strike actions. Number three, proxy wars. Escalating the Middle East, the South China Sea, and Eastern Europe are all becoming active conflict zones. Number four, nuclear posturing. Macron discusses an independent European atomic deterrent, while Russia continues its nuclear saber rattling. Number five, economic destabilization. Outrageous sanctions, energy crisis, and trade wars fueling desperation among world powers. My conclusion this evening. Are we on the verge of a global war? Are we on the verge of global war with growing divisions among Western allies, heightened nuclear rhetoric, and prolonged instability in multiple theaters? The specter of World War III looms larger. The question is no longer whether the world is in a crisis, but whether global powers can de-escalate before reaching a point of no return. The upcoming NATO and EU summits will determine the path forward. Will diplomacy prevail? Or are we on the brink of a conflict that will reshape the world order? And that's all I have this evening. Thank you all again for the love and support. I'm going to continue to research and break down what's going on in our world. You guys can notice the different background this evening. Well, the background, I wanted to make a stance, my own stance, because of my own research and what I've done. We're on the brink. We are. And a lot of people do not realize how serious it's becoming. A lot of people have had their heads in the sand for 2 years. Now the world is somewhat waking up to what I've been saying the last 2 years. I love you all so much, right? Let me know what you all think in the comments, right? I'm going to try to create shorter but still detailed reports like tonight. We're almost getting to 10 minutes. I thought it was going to be a little longer, but it's not. At the same time, I think it's a really good report, right? I've researched this through and through. I'm going to keep on talking about the possibility of World War III. My research is starting to pan out, right? So I love you all so much. Remember, Stay vigilant, stay watchful, right? And be prepared for what's coming. Right? I love you all so much. Have a very, very blessed evening. This is Watchdog News in association with Watchdog Ministries. Jared Campbell. I'm signing off for this evening. Have a very, very blessed evening. Enjoy the rest of y'all's weekend. I love you all so much. For those of you who follow the Bible, we're going to start back next week. Right? The rest of this weekend, cover some news. I love you all so much.